Hi everyone, and welcome to another video game video. And today we're looking at Shenmue. My name's Rob, and joining me is Rob.
Hello.
Yes. Now, the reason why I've asked Rob to come on this with me is because Rob is a Yakuza video game aficionado. He knows all about Yakuza, and he has played some of the Shenmue games in the past. This scene that I've decided to open with, it kind of plays into the entirety of the story of Shenmue. And I thought this was one of the better scenes to talk about the first game. Unlike everyone else with the remastered versions of Shenmue, because this is on the PS4. I thought it was better to have Shenmue and Shenmue 2 separated into two videos because and I'll explain the reasons why as we go along. This is one of the locations in Double Eater that you can visit the fortune tellers. If you get stuck in the game, you can go to a fortune teller's and they'll give you a hint. It's saved on the cost of, when the game was out originally, you used to have to ring those helplines, if you remember.
I do, yeah. I mean, I played this one a good few times.
Yeah.
It's the sequel that I never played, so this is all very familiar to me.
Yeah. And obviously there's the locations of Dobuita and Yokosuka and, what was it? I've forgotten the one. It begins with an S, Sakugaraoka or something like that. And then there's the warehouse district when you get a job later on in the game. This is surprisingly, and a lot of people seem to forget that this is actually a thing in the game. This is the actual intro of the game. You remember back with the older games, if you just left the controller after the game started, it would go into this cutscene type video introduction.
They still do it now.
They still do it now, but not as often. This is the one from Shenmue. And this was surprising to me when I first watched this because I was thinking, wow, those are amazing graphics for the Dreamcast.
Well, they're not very good now, the graphics. They have dated and they haven't updated them, and people are annoyed about that.
I'm not annoyed about it in the slightest.
I know, that's fine, but it stood up quite well at the time.
Yeah, well, think about it. You had a game that was originally supposed to be on the Saturn, now being made for the Dreamcast and coming out on the Dreamcast.
It's like PlayStation 2 era sort of time frame.
Yeah.
It's a very good looking PlayStation 2 game on that sort of basis.
Yeah. Be ready for Shenhua's giant face. There it is. That bit freaked me out the first time I saw it. This also gave rise to the whole QuickTime event, the QTE, that's become so common now.
As much as it used to be, it did tone down. I think Resident Evil 4 was a much bigger perpetrator.
Yeah, well, don't forget, there was the Xbox One launch title, Rise, Son of Rome, or was it? That used a lot of QTEs. And so, they are still prevalent. One of the interesting things I found about... I'm not going to talk too much about the actual gameplay. There's exploration, obviously. There's the capsule toys. You can play video games in the arcade. You can play darts and QuickTime event type games and stuff like that. There's all sorts you can do in Shenmue, but one of the main things is going around and trying to solve mysteries, and the way it handles that is really interesting. You basically start off with just a couple of clues. You know that the guy that you're after is called Landy. You know that they were travelling in a black car and it was travelling at speed, and that's all you start off with.
This takes me back.
This is Double Eater. This is kind of the seedier area of the town, or of the town centre. You also find out that this is where sailors hang out.
It's a very small town, though, let's be fair.
It's a very, very small town. It's not a big area of exploration for a good portion of the game until you get a job. But the way you move around, the mechanics of your movement, they're a little cumbersome. You can't really turn corners on a sixpence. You have the turning circle of a train or a barge or something like that. It's cumbersome. But that was the game on the Dreamcast, and they didn't really update the control system for the PlayStation 4. But I kind of liked the fact that they didn't update the control system.
Yeah, you're just sort of reiterating what I've had to say about Yakuza in the past. It plays like sort of a clunky PlayStation 2 game, but there's a charm in that.
There is a charm in that. One of the other things I really like about the Shenmue game, I mean, aside from the fact that you have to try and piece together this mystery by asking people, you have to go and talk to people to find clues. And obviously, this scene you've just seen is between Nozomi and Ryo. This is the interesting bit, the notebook, where you keep all the notes. And that's one of the things that I really love about Shenmue, is that it's virtually impossible to get 100% on a playthrough.
I know this isn't really what you just said, but this reminds me an awful lot of the little village you play in Yakuza 6 when you go to Hiroshima.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised by that, because they basically are the same development team. And the Yakuza games are ultimately what replaced Shenmue. There's Tom.
I walked past him so many times when I was lost in this little area.
Yeah.
How innocent it was to be lost in such a small space back then.
Exactly. But this is the thing, we didn't know any better back then. But if you look at just everything around, it's so detailed for its time.
Yeah, it's just like play. I know this is very reductive because Shenmue is like a legend in its own right, but it is like looking at the prototype to Yakuza. It's so alike in every single way.
Exactly. I mean, buying capsule toys. Now, I will give you a little bit of a tip. When you play the first Shenmue game, buy as many capsule toys as you can. Right?
Why?
There is a reason, and I'm not going to tell you until the video for Shenmue 2.
I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Somebody called Morbo? Don't know. But anyway, obviously, we know the story. Ryo comes home and he finds that there are people there. His dad is killed in front of him. He goes on a quest for revenge. Along the way, he decides to play some arcade games. As you do.
Well, you can't be revenging 24/7, can you?
Exactly. I did have a go at Space Harrier because I couldn't resist. It's Space Harrier. But I also played these QuickTime event games, which are fun and all, you know. This is one of the most cumbersome parts, is trying to focus on a particular thing so you can activate it. That was one of the most difficult parts of playing this on the Dreamcast and playing it now. But once you're focused on it, once you're playing the game, it's a lot of fun. You know?
Yeah, the thing about this, though, is it's not really designed for people who are unaware, really, is it?
Yeah, it's not.
It's designed for fans.
This is a remaster that's purely for fans. And if you are going to play this, what I would say is, don't be put off by the control system. Don't judge it by today's standards, because you shouldn't. It's a game that has its own unique charm. It has its own place in video games history. One of my favourite games to play in the arcade, by the way, was darts. And the whole point of the darts, you'll see, it's bizarre, but somehow really enjoyable. Because you have no control over where the dart's going to go. It's just pot luck.
I kind of like darts anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation 1 is a bad game, but I'd still call it one of my favourites.
Yeah. This is an interesting bit. This happens...
History has made it a bad game. I mean.
Yeah, it has. But this is an interesting bit. One of the main thrusts of the game, Shenmue, is, by and large, a martial arts saga. And that plays into this scene here, where you and Fukusan are sparring in the dojo. And you also have various areas where you can actually... there are like three main areas once you get a job, where you can actually practice your moves just in a park and in a car park and in an empty warehouse area, where you can actually practice your moves. And there are move scrolls that you can buy that will increase the variety of moves that you can do in a fight.
It looks an awful lot like Virtua Fighter.
Well, all of this was modelled on Virtua Fighter. the entire thing was modeled on Virtua Fighter, and the original story. You remember Akira from Virtua Fighter? The original story, the character of Ryo was supposed to be Akira from Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, I can see the sort of similarity.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about Shenmue, though, is that you can learn moves from other people, and you can basically, if you go through certain sequences of events, you can basically meet certain characters, certain NPCs, who will teach you one of their moves, and that becomes part of your repertoire, and then you basically can use those in combat. Combat in this is a lot like fighting in Virtua Fighter, so it's it is a little bit tricky to get to grips with. It's not like your fighters. Obviously, I've got to include the forklift truck race.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I didn't spend way too much time doing this.
Okay, another pro tip for you, right? For anyone who's going to play Shenmue, this is really important.
Don't race like you do, because you're doing awful.
Yeah, I'm doing awful, but at the end of every race, you get a trophy for where you come in the race, yeah?
Yeah.
Try and get a trophy for each position. It's important when you get to Shenmue 2.
Okay.
Well, not important, but it's preferable to have it than not. Anyway, this is the actual beginning of the game. We finally get to it. And this is basically the reason why I decided to start this video with the scene of Ryo and his dad having dinner.
Somebody knocked the snot out of Fuku-san.
Yeah. One of the things I love about Shenmue is the music is amazing in this. And the expressions on the faces, everything like that, everyone's so stern and serious most of the time. The introduction to Landy, I think this is one of the greatest introductions to a bad guy in video games, because he doesn't say anything, but you immediately know he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I differ from a lot of people.
Okay.
This is where I differ from a lot of people, in my opinion, of exactly what's going on in Shenmue. Ryo, for example, people don't seem to realize this, but Ryo actually becomes colder as the story progresses. Right? And you don't really realize this until you play Shenmue 2, but when you go back and play Shenmue, after playing Shenmue 2, you start seeing the elements of Ryo just basically hardening his heart, removing his emotions in his quest for revenge. He's slowly becoming more and more like Landy.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't see that until you play Shenmue 2. And I'll go more into that in the video for Shenmue 2. But one of the reasons for that is because he's the one at fault here. He's the reason his dad died.
Okay.
Also,
you mean Ryo?
Yeah, Ryo believes he's the reason his dad died. He believes, because of this, that you're seeing in front of us. And that is a fundamental reason why he's so distressed and why he wants revenge so much. Part of it is to ease his guilty conscience. And the thing is, how many times have we seen that kind of plot in a martial arts movie?
A considerable amount.
We know it's a fundamental thing that happens in a lot of martial arts stories. This is another bit, though, that Ryo doesn't really understand, and it gets downplayed a lot later on, as the game progresses, as Shenmue progresses, the fact that Ryo's dad killed somebody.
Okay.
That's again something that gets downplayed, and at the beginning of the game, and at certain points in the game, you will question, why did your dad kill somebody? What's going on? The more you play the game, and it is fundamentally a mystery, it's a martial arts mystery. It's something that I loved playing when it came out.
So feasibly, Andy could be the same as you in the respect of he's just getting revenge on behalf of the person who was killed.
Yeah. So, that's the fundamentals of it. Anyway, we're going to end the video there. We are coming to the end of it now. Rather a dramatic ending, I find. But I thought the first game had a much more serious tone to it. You basically saw Ryo progress from just an ordinary martial arts practicing high school kid into something else.
Yeah, it was very mature for its time.
Yeah, and the reason why I included the scene of him, the QuickTime scene with him looking at the guy's tattoo and investigating the cartel, is to show just how different he's becoming over time, over the course of his investigation. But we're going to leave it there. So, what do you think of Shenmue? Do you love it as much as I do? This has been one of my passions for years. I'm really looking forward to Shenmue 3. But what do you think of Shenmue? Let us know in the comments below. If you've liked this video, then, subscribe to our channel. You'll find all sorts of other stuff if you head to our website, thegeekshow.co.uk. But until we see you for the Shenmue 2 video, I've been Rob.
I've been Rob.
And we'll see you later.